WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. The impact of bad ARIA on web accessibility, with speakers Rashmi Katakwar, Web Accessibility Consultant. This presentation was recorded September 28, 2023.
Welcome to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. My name is Ronak Ganatra and I am a WordPress engineer at Multidots. Thank you for joining us for this session, the impact of bad ARIA on web accessibility with Rashmi Katakwar. Rashmi is a passionate accessibility enthusiast and freelance web accessibility consultant. She is also an invited expert at W3C. And actively contributes to the cognitive and learning disabilities accessibility task force. Rashmi is deeply committed to ensuring equal access to technology for all individuals. Her enthusiasm for accessibility is driven by her unwavering belief in the power of technology to create a more inclusive society. Please feel free to add your questions in the Zoom Q&A section, and we will answer them at the end of the session. Use the chat to connect with other attendees. Now, I think, Rashmi, the stage is yours. You can start. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the wonderful introduction, Adrian. So, hi, this is Rashmi Katakwar. I am from India. I am a freelance web accessibility consultant and W3C invited expert. I am also actively contributing towards the work of KOGA task force as the part of W3C. And I am also acting as social media manager at Hello My LinkedIn community. So I welcome you all to my presentation on the topic, Impact of Bad ARIA on Web Accessibility. Let me start with giving you a brief introduction about why I chose this topic. So during accessibility audits, I found that many accessibility and usability issues were coming due to wrong usages of ARIA in code. These wrong usages of ARIA were posing significant challenges for people who use assistive technologies to navigate the web. It is appreciable that developers are using ARIA with good intention, but without sufficient knowledge, they may fall in trap of bad ARIA and may end up in creating inaccessible solutions. ARIA is a very powerful tool to enhance accessibility for people who use assistive technologies, if used adequately. On the other hand, its misuse creates more harm than good. So today, with help of my presentation, with real-life examples, I will share how misuse of ARIA creates hurdles for users and how you can remove those hurdles by using correct ARIA and following best practices. I assure you, by the end of this session, you will be having better understanding of all ARIA concepts. This will also help you align your intent, effort, and impact towards improving web accessibility. Following ARIA best practices and using proactive approach will also help to reduce burden on developers and businesses in terms of time, effort, and money. This will also improve user experiences as well as reduce legal risks. I'm sure you all must have heard about the famous quote from movie Spider-Man, that with great power comes great responsibility, which is also applicable in case when we use ARIA. ARIA is gives us power to improve accessibility. So when we use ARIA, it is our responsibility to use it judiciously. Because misuse of ARIA creates more harm than good. Bad ARIA is like a faulty RAM that doesn't serve its intended purpose. Imagine a RAM that is installed at the height of 1 foot from the landing surface. Does this RAM really help wheelchair users? Of course not. After all, it is not meant for skateboarders to show their strength. The architect had good intentions while he installed it, but without following the proper guidelines and understanding user needs, he failed to understand and he failed to understand all the users' needs and failed to help wheelchair users. Similarly, if developers use ARIA without understanding it and implement it in the code, they fail to help users as intended. The data from the latest WebM survey also supports my concerns. The 2023 WebM Million survey data tells the usage of ARIA is increased by 29% in just 1 year. And it is increased fourfold since 2019. So what is the point of concern? The point of concern is that it also states that 68.6% more detected errors are found on pages with ARIA. The more ARIA attributes those were present, the more accessibility errors were expected. The bottom line is, if you use ARIA incorrectly, you can make your sites less accessible. So why not understand this with help of one real life example? Let's meet Bob.
Edit search for gifts, flowers.
Bob is a non-sighted screen reader user. He wanted to surprise his beloved wife Sarah on their anniversary by gifting her some personalized items. With great excitement, he opened the website to search for gifts. But to his dismay, as soon as he started exploring the site with keyboard and screen reader, he was showered with sudden and unexpected announcements. This left him disoriented and interrupted his screen reader's flow. He could hardly focus on his content amidst continuous interruptions. I have recorded his experience in a video. The video shows user using the screen reader NVDA with keyboard. And the speech viewer window shows the text read by screen reader in linear order. So let's listen to the audio together to understand Bob's experience better.
Edit search for gifts, flowers. Blank. Buy plants online, buy plants online. Buy flowers in India, send flowers to India, online cake delivery on. List with 5 items, track order, visited link. Buy flowers in India. Edit search for gifts, flowers. Blank. Buy plants online, buy plants online. Buy flowers in India, send flowers to India, online cake delivery on. List with 5 items, track order, visited link. Buy flowers in India, send flowers to India. Online cake delivery, online cake delivery. Buy plants online, buy plants online. 0 cart, visited link. Buy flowers in India, send flowers to India, online cake delivery, online cake delivery.
Sounds annoying. So what happened to Bob's search for gifts? After a few minutes of struggle, he closed the site and dropped the idea of online gifting to his wife. So what was the reason behind? This was happening due to misuse of ARIA attribute, ARIA live equal to polite on auto-rotating carousels. We will discuss that later. But for the moment, the author has used the ARIA under the impression that it will help the users, the screen reader users. But what happened in reality? In reality, it badly broke users' experience. So this is what happens when websites are built with bad ARIA. From Bob's experience, we got an understanding that instead of helping assistive technology users, bad ARIA poses barriers for them. It leaves the user misguided, frustrated, sometimes create false expectation for them. It bars them from having full digital experiences. And such experiences may compel users to either leave their task midway or depend on others to finish their task. Thus, it fails the purpose of ARIA. So let's know what ARIA is all about, because understanding it and using it wisely is very crucial. In modern times, the web pages are behaving more like rich internet applications. They are having rich user interfaces, advanced user interfaces, and dynamic contents. Unfortunately, HTML is not having all the inbuilt semantics to convey the semantics for all these rich controls like tabs, tab list, tree, menu, etc. Sighted user can perceive these controls with the help of visual design patterns. But without semantics, the assistive technology users may not be knowing the complete functionality and behavior of these elements. So here ARIA acts as a bridge to fill that gap. Web Accessibility Initiative, Accessible Rich Internet Applications, or ARIA, or ARIA as we say in short. ARIA is a W3C specification. It includes a set of roles and attributes that authors can add to HTML to improve web accessibility of web content and web application for users who use assistive technologies, primarily for screen readers. Suppose you are reading a storybook and somebody has added little notes to help you understand the story better. So ARIA are like those notes, in simple terms if you say. Power of ARIA is immense. It has lots of features inside it. We have limited time, so let's cover some of them today in brief. So ARIA provides author. It helps authors to describe the type of widgets with the help of roles such as tab list, tab, menu tree, etc. They can define state with the help of attributes like ARIA selected, ARIA controls, etc. They can define relationship among elements with ARIA owns, ARIA controls, etc. Authors can provide accessible name using ARIA label or ARIA labeled by, or they can provide accessible description with the help of ARIA described by. Authors can add, to convey the dynamic content changes, author can use live regions. For example, success messages, error messages, warnings, or sports score update, etc. They can use ARIA hidden attributes to hide the decorative contents. Now the question comes, how ARIA helps assistive technologies? ARIA helps in adding role, name, state, etc. to the accessibility tree created from document object model. This in turn helps accessibility API to pass that information to assistive technologies. Now we know that what ARIA can do. So let's also understand what ARIA cannot do. ARIA cannot add behavior to an element. It cannot change appearance of an element. Neither can it add focusability, nor it can add keyboard functionality to the elements. For adding these features, the author has to use scripts and CSS. To make optimal use of ARIA, author should follow 5 rules of ARIA. So what are they? Let's explore them one by one. Rule 1 says, do not use ARIA if the same semantic is available in HTML. So if you have to create a checkbox, use native input element with type as checkbox instead of using role as checkbox on the div element. Most of the HTML elements have native semantics that they convey to the screen readers. So the rule 2 says, do not change the native semantics unless you really have to. Because ARIA may change the semantics and the meanings for the screen reader users. Rule 3 says, all interactive controls must be usable with keyboard. What does that mean? ARIA rules add only semantic. To make it navigable and operable, it is author's responsibility. So if you are using role equal to button on an element, you have to make it focusable with keyboard. And the user should be able to activate it with the help of enter key and space bar in Windows. The rule 4 says, do not add role equal to presentation or ARIA hidden equal to true on focusable elements. Because using either of these will result in user focusing on nothing. Accessible names are names used by assistive technology, are text used by assistive technologies to identify the element. So the rule 5 says all interactive elements must have an accessible name. If authors don't follow these rules, ARIA does more harm than good. That's why it is very common saying, no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. Let's understand this with an interesting example from my personal audit. Let's understand this with understanding with volume slider. There is a volume slider control, which is created with native input element having type as role as widget, role as range. Author has used label element to bind it with the slider with for ID attribute. The author has also added label element with ARIA label equal to volume control and ARIA hidden equal to true. I would repeat. Author has also added ARIA label equal to volume control and ARIA hidden equal to true on the label element itself. Now take few moments and let me know through the chat. What will be the accessible name for this slider? Unfortunately, there will be no accessible name for the slider. And the screen readers, users will not listen any name about, and they will not know the purpose of the element. So what went wrong? Due to ARIA hidden equal to true on the label element, it has hidden the visible label as well as ARIA label. So screen reader do not know the purpose of the element. The author had added unnecessary ARIA attributes on the elements unnecessarily without understanding them properly, and eventually ended up in creating inaccessible interface. In short, ARIA serves no purpose here because the label element itself was sufficient to provide accessible name. The bottom line is use ARIA only and only when it is enhancing accessibility. No ARIA is better than bad ARIA. Let's move to another example of Emily. Emily is a speech user input. She has lost all her 4 limbs in a tragic accident. So she uses speech input software to interact with the digital world. She is very fond of reading books. She wants to follow her favorite author on Facebook. The visible link on the author's website is follow me on Facebook. If you were in place of Emily, what voice command you would have given to access the link? Let me know through the chat. I am sure you all must have used click follow me on Facebook. Emily tried the same, but it didn't work. Because the author has used ARIA label equal to opens in a new window to help screen reader users to explain the behavior of the link that it will be opening in a new window. But unfortunately, he was not aware of that. The native text inside the link will be overwritten by ARIA label. And the mismatch of visible label and the ARIA label or accessible name will create challenges for users. One correct way is to append the text opens in a new window inside the link text itself. This will help users. Now, how can developers avoid these mistakes and use correct ARIA? Let's break all ARIA concepts one by one to know them, how to use them correctly. First, let's explore the key points to provide accessible name using ARIA. So always remember, ARIA mechanism always take precedence over native HTML techniques. So choose them carefully. Start accessible name with the visible label as a best practice. ARIA label or ARIA labeled by do not work on generic elements if they are not given proper roles. So suppose you are having ARIA label equal to cookie banner on div element and you forget to define the role. So the screen reader will not read the label cookie banner. So always take care these points in mind while providing accessible names. There are multiple ways to provide accessible names except ARIA also. So if you want to, suppose you want to add name to the button or link, you can put text inside link or button, or you can add alt to the images, or you can use for ID attribute to bind the label elements with form fields. But if you think that ARIA is the right solution, what should you do? If you think ARIA is the right solution to provide accessible name, check if the text already exists in the document, then use ARIA labeled by. And if the text is not already in the document, then you can use ARIA label. Here the other point to consider is ARIA described by is for providing accessible description. It's not for providing accessible names. For example, to programmatically associate error description with the corresponding form field. Authors sometimes get confused between ARIA described by and ARIA labeled by. So always remember these points. Now next slide covers role with required parent-child attributes, parent-child relationships. There are certain roles that require certain parent-child relationship among them, like tab list tab, or list box option, radio group radio, menu item, radio checkbox, etc. Providing clear parent-child relationship helps screen reader users in easy navigation, and it helps them in conveying structure and relationship properly. So if the relationship is conveyed properly, the screen reader will communicate the information to the user like item position inside a list or menu or item level in a tree structure hierarchy. Some authors provide parent role on the parent element and they forget to define. They provide parent role, but forget to define the child role. And they sometimes provide child role and forget to define parent role. For example, they provide role equal to menu on the parent element, but forget to define role equal to menu item radio or menu item checkbox on the descendant element. Similarly, they provide role equal to tab on the child element, but forget to define role equal to tab list on the parent element. It's still possible that screen reader and browser combination convey the information, but others may not. So make it unreliable solutions. Not defining proper relationship leaves user with partial context. So the question comes, how can you check these relationships? So to find the issues related with parent-child relationships, you can either inspect the code manually, or you can use accessibility editors as you code. Or you can use automated testing tools like XDiv tool, etc. Similarly, there are some roles with certain ARIA attributes. There are certain roles which require ARIA attributes associated with them. For example, role equal to heading should be associated with appropriate ARIA level. Role equal to checkbox should be associated with attribute ARIA checked. Role equal to slider should be associated with ARIA value now. Without those attributes, they will fail to convey proper semantics to the screen reader users. But authors often forget to convey this. Suppose you are using role equal to heading on a div element, and you have not provided the correct ARIA level attribute. So the screen reader may not convey the exact level that should be conveyed for the element. So always refer the latest ARIA specification for checking with the roles and attribute association. The other misused feature is ARIA live region. The dynamic content changes, those are not focusable. They don't receive focus, are not obvious to screen reader users. For example, warning messages, success messages, status updates, or periodic score updates, etc. This region should be marked with ARIA live region. So some key points to consider while using ARIA live regions are: role equal to alert should be used for time sensitive or critical information, whereas ARIA live equal to polite should be used for low priority messages or updates. Sometimes authors mistakenly use role equal to alert or ARIA live equal to assertive on low priority message. That is wrong use. We have already seen one misuse of ARIA live equal to polite on our auto-rotating carousel example in case of Bob's experience. So for auto-rotating carousels, ARIA live equal to off should be used to suppress the announcements. If you want the entire region of the ARIA live region to be read by the screen reader, then you should use ARIA atomic equal to true with ARIA live, because the default value of ARIA atomic is false. Sometimes author add ARIA live regions on the content updates itself. This doesn't work. Why? Because the ARIA live comes into picture only when the content actually changes, not on the initial load. So the element with ARIA live must be present in the DOM structure on page load so that screen reader may pick it up and monitor for changes. Now come to roles. ARIA roles set some expectations, so choosing role is very crucial. The roles menu bar and menu are appropriate to offer list of choices. Those are similar to as a menu in desktop application. For example, to provide list of action or functions like add, edit, save, etc. If you create a site navigation with the help of role equal to menu bar, the screen reader user will expect that you should be able to navigate menu and submenus with the help of arrow keys. But when this doesn't happen, they feel confused and disoriented. So for the typical site navigations with expandable group of links, disclosure pattern should be used. Similarly, role equal to presentation is also often misinterpreted. Contrary to common belief, the role equal to presentation does not hide content from screen readers or assistive technologies. It only removes implicit ARIA semantics from being exposed to accessibility tree. The content of the element still remains available to the assistive technologies. So roles sometimes act as a cloak, so choose them wisely. Now let's discuss incorrect use of some ARIA attributes. Authors misunderstand some ARIA attributes. They fail to find the difference between selected, pressed, and checked state. Sometimes they use ARIA selected for to simulate the toggle buttons or to indicate that a checkbox is checked. But for toggle buttons, ARIA press should be used. And for the checkboxes or radio buttons, ARIA checked is the right attribute. ARIA selected should be used to indicate selected option inside a list box or menu, etc., or a tab in tab list, etc. The other misused feature is ARIA expanded. ARIA expanded should be used on links or buttons that cause the content to expand or collapse. But often what happens that authors use them on the content itself. That is the wrong use of ARIA expanded. And surprisingly, sometimes authors use ARIA expanded on the last level of menu hierarchy. So it conveys the user's wrong semantics. The screen reader users think that the last level of menu hierarchy, the last level of menu hierarchy item can be expanded, but in reality it cannot. So it leaves user disoriented. So always choose your attribute with caution. Now we have explored many theoretical concepts about ARIA, but true accessibility goes beyond theory and guidelines. Accessibility can't be assumed. Do you remember the faulty RAM from the start of our session? If the architect tested the RAM with wheelchair users, it would have served its purpose better. Visually, everything may seem fine and perfect, but the actual challenges come forth only when you test them with real users, real devices, and assistive technologies. It is also worth mentioning here that automation testing doesn't cover all the accessibility issues. Let's understand the importance of manual and screen reader testing with the help of one example from a personal experience. So I was following a popular example to create accessible tab lists. I copied the code and tested it in the browser. There are 3 tabs, namely HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in the tab list. All the 3 tabs were working fine visually until I started screen reader. Let's check this video to know what went wrong when I started screen reader.
Main landmark. Learn Web Development Basics tab control. HTML tab selected 1 of 3. HTML property page HTML heading level 2. The hypertext markup language or HTML is the standard markup. CSS tab selected 2 of 3. Blank. JavaScript tab selected 3 of 3. Blank.
So even with screen readers, everything was working fine. But when we switched to tab 2 and tab 3, the screen reader was not reading the content of tab panel and tab panel 2 and tab panel 3. When I observed the code, I realized that author has updated the value of native hidden attribute on tab panel 2 and tab panel 3. But he forgot to update the value of ARIA attribute, that is ARIA hidden equal to true, on the tab panel 2 and tab panel 3. So due to mishandling of ARIA hidden on tab panels, the content of tab panel 2 and tab panel 3 remains unavailable to screen reader users. This example emphasizes the importance of manual testing. That with screen reader, it is imperative to check your code with screen readers to check for correct implementation of ARIA inside your code. Here the use of ARIA hidden is repetitive. It's redundant because the value of hidden attribute was already taking care of the state of the tab panels 2 and tab panel 3. So it also iterates that do not use ARIA unless you have to. Now we have covered important core concepts about some attributes.
Mainland.
Let's move to know about keyboard usability. So the purpose of ARIA is to help web developers create rich web experiences. Those are usable like native software applications. So in native software applications, the user tabs to the complex user interfaces or widgets and then use arrow keys to navigate inside that widget. So when developers use ARIA to create rich internet applications, they should follow the primary keyboard navigation conventions. Those are common across all the platforms. So for composite widgets, tabs should move focus to the widget and primarily the arrow key should be used to move inside the widgets that have multiple focusable items inside it, like list boxes, tree, menu grid, etc. Not following the usability convention will leave user disoriented and it will drastically reduce the usability. Let's jump to improper management of focus inside composite widgets with ARIA active descendant. So there are two methods to manage focus inside composite widgets. The first one is roving tab index, and other one is using ARIA active descendant on the container element. Each technique gives us the ability to navigate inside the widget with arrow keys. We will talk about the second method. So ARIA active descendant on the container element tells the screen reader which item is currently active inside the widget. It works as a spotlight for screen reader users. So when the value of ARIA active descendant is changed, the screen reader receives focus change events, like if DOM focus has actually been moved. Authors provide ARIA active descendant on the container element, but they forgot to update it dynamically when user presses navigation keys like up or down arrow keys. So here, as we can see in our combo box example to choose favorite food item, that the currently active item is visually seen as burger, that is option 3. But the value of ARIA active descendant on the container element itself says that it is op 1, that is pizza. So it has not been updated. So if the author forget to update it dynamically, the user will struggle to choose the currently active item and they won't know which item to select because they will not get the full information. As screen reader user, as the screen reader will not read that information. So whenever you choose this method for focus management with ARIA active descendant on the container element, use it with care. Now what we can do to make best use of ARIA? Let's summarize. First and foremost, never use ARIA unless you have to. Upskill yourself with latest ARIA specification, that is currently 1.2. And use ARIA authoring practice guide to learn how to use ARIA right. Use accessibility linters. Accessibility linters are the plugins that report bugs in real time when you write the code. Use automated accessibility checkers like XDev tool, Wave, etc. when you run your code in the browser. Always test your code with keyboard screen readers like NVDA, JAWS, TalkBack, VoiceOver, and speech input software. While choosing themes, plugins, components, libraries, frameworks, etc., always take care that you check them for their accessibility support before using them. Document the use of ARIA in your code to make it easier for others to understand and maintain it better. The best way to ensure accessibility is always involve assistive technology users during testing. When we follow best ARIA practices with using proactive approach, we not only make our websites more accessible, but we also save lots of resources. On the other hand, when we use bad ARIA without understanding it, and without thoroughly testing it, and if we ship inaccessible code in a hurry, we accrue accessibility debt. Because fixing accessibility at later stages need manifold time, effort, and financial cost. Suppose if you are into creating open source components, frames, plugins, content management system, or learning management system, authoring tools, etc. Just imagine the difference. Just imagine the difference you can make in long run to save the cost, time, and effort exponentially if accessibility is considered from the day one. So let's make accessibility a priority, not an afterthought. And do not pass over this debt to the later sprints. At last, I would like to say, ARIA is created to help assistive technology users. So ARIA should not be treated as mere code decoration, but rather as a powerful tool to empower people with disabilities. To harness the full potential of ARIA, use ARIA judiciously and only when necessary, because misuse of ARIA does more harm than good. Accessibility is a shared responsibility. It's not a one person's job. So let's join our efforts together to make the world more inclusive and accessible for all. Because web is for all. Thank you. Thank you for joining me this session. And if you have any questions, you can ask me through chat, or you can connect me later through my mail or social media connections. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rashmi, for the wonderful session. It was very informative to me as well as being a developer. We have some questions, and most of them are asking for the slide decks. So yes, you can post it once you have ready. But let us see some other questions. So one question from the videos is, do you think the statement, the rule in using ARIA is not to use ARIA is still true today?
Sorry, I didn't listen you properly.
You see in the Q&A section, you will be able to read as well. Do you think the statement, the rule in using ARIA is not to use ARIA is still true today?
Yeah, it depends on the context actually. If you are not having dynamic components, or you are not having some interactive controls, then of course you can do it without ARIA. If you are having limited content on your pages, but if you are having rich interfaces and having interactive controls and dynamic content, definitely we will have to go for ARIA.
Okay.
But during design time, we can also check that what components we should use so that we can use the minimum of ARIA.
Thank you, Rashmi. One more question regarding, is it okay to still use ARIA if alt is already available? Can they go hand in hand or an overuse?
So if it is solving the purpose, if it's not having extra description, then it's okay to give the alt text only. If the image is having some extra content that you need to describe, then you can use ARIA described by attribute with giving the details.
Thank you. A question from Rajat is, hello Rashmi, is similar framework available for Android-based apps?
So it's basically for supporting HTML. It's not for the native apps. So it is for supporting the web pages. Those are based with HTML.
Thank you. Let us go towards conclusion. Let us have the last question, Rashmi. Is there any ARIA attribute you would absolutely not use because of poor support?
I think currently the ARIA grabbed has been deprecated. So the why ARIA is looking for another element, another attribute to make that thing more better.
Thank you everyone for attending this session with Rashmi. You can continue the conversation in the chat or on social media using hashtag WPA11YDay and hashtag WPAD2023. We also appreciate it if you go to the 2023.wpaccessibility.day/feedback. I will provide the link in the chat as well to provide anonymous feedback for our speakers on their presentation and can enter to win a t-shirt while you are there. Stay tuned for the next session, which will be lightning talks, sponsored lightning talks. And while you are waiting, don't forget to visit our sponsors pages to grab virtual swags and enter for a chance to win a great prizes. See you right here after the break. Thank you.
Thank you to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023 sponsors. Platinum sponsor, Equalize Digital. Equalize Digital's Accessibility Checker plugin is an automated accessibility scanning tool that helps WordPress websites become and stay accessible. Platinum sponsor, Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is the professional form builder that you need to create beautiful, powerful, and accessible forms. Gold sponsors, 20i, DQ, Empire Caption Solutions, Pressable, and WP Engine. Silver sponsors, CodeGeek, Drake Cooper, GoDaddy, Lone Rock Point, NerdPress, Overnight Website by Kinetic Iris, Riola Networks, A11Y Collective, and The Blogsmith. Bronze sponsors, Accessicart, Green Geeks Web Hosting, Hall Analysis SEO Consulting, HDC, ITX, IvyCat, MetaBox, Pixel Chefs, Simply Schedule Appointments, SiteGround, Termageddon, Underrepresented in Tech, Weglot, and Yoast.